This is the final career interest presentation by Del Lowry. School success with creativity, a return to simple basics. As we have strayed from the simple basics of education, we have denied our children their birthright, and that's just to be kids. As I'm not really seeking employment nor looking to change vocations, I'm happy to research and impart the opportunities to reignite the foundation to education and science. It's creativity. My objective was to learn a few tips to offer teachers in their standard-laden lives opportunities to work with creativity in their classrooms. Not the color in the lines, worksheets many students are given and pretending it's math or literacy, but to actually have the child organically create within themselves designs to be successful in school. Where were we in the 1940s? The World War was over, the Americans saved the day, and we were gloriously triumphant. Men came home to careers, the women tended the household, and children were born. Baby boomers, as they're called. They had discipline, chores, and most reveled in their time at school. Rigor was ever present as various languages such as Latin and German were taught. Biology included dissecting of frogs or pigs, and the arts were everywhere. Drama, marching band, chorus, woodworking. Kids delved into life in school. But educating a population means less control of a population, and here the deconstruction began. On we go into the 1960s. The students integrating into schools began despite violence. Self-pride wore away as street drugs were introduced in pandemic rates. The war on Vietnam was launched, and 18-year-old boys from Ohio were swept into the Far East, handed a gun, and were lucky to make it back home alive. Rock and roll became ever more rebellious and simple with their lyrics. Baby love, ooh, baby love, baby, you get the point. We need help. We need somebody. And it wasn't just for our hair. But the dichotomy was that we put men on the moon. Well, bad hair, that was just one of many assaults on how ridiculous we could make our lives just to break out of the mold. And in the 1970s, we found another shift. We still had discipline in our schools, and parents still revered teachers. Teachers had good paying salary, and their jobs held tenure and a plan for retirement. Classrooms were starting to unsettle in many places, and gangs and racial conflicts started to escalate, even more so from the 1960s. But the government continued to push the movement. It is during this time that the arts started to fade. With the pushing for the creation of standards, English and math make their way to assessment, and stakes are put onto them. And we move forward to the millennials. Now, much has transpired here, but for the sake of the timeliness of this presentation, I'm just going to stick forward into the 2000s, where many of us have a very clear recollection of what's been transpiring. All but discipline's been removed from the schools, and any of it that is provided is found ineffective, as really quite often kids have nothing to lose. Very little's going on at home. They're removed by the sake of technology and gamification. Drugs and dropouts are just two of the many kinds of D's in schools besides the grades that we're experiencing currently. The feds have now required a specific cookie-cutter approach to standards and provide little in the way of support or teaching to the districts. The country is literally split in half, with the assessments with the PARC going on the East Coast and the Smarter Balance on the West Coast, and there remains nothing but an illusion of commonality. The research is questionable, and it fragments teachers. The arts, well, they are there if one can afford to belong to them. Uniforms, instruments, bus rides, etc. are all now fee-based, so those who cannot afford them are just out of luck. But why all this bleak content? Well, just to point out there is a deficit, but what is it? Einstein said the greatest scientists are artists as well. And that was a quote that he had attributed when he himself was quite an accomplished musician and an artist as well. So why did I do this little history lesson? Well, it's to kind of identify the fact that deconstruction did take place within our school systems, that we at one point were quite well-rounded in our educational background and processes, and that today one of the elements that's missing is creativity. So what I did was I went in and I found several different resources that teachers can do to reintroduce a learned skill. It's not something that is innate, it's something that we are taught. And since we've removed it from much of our classroom instructional time, we've got to look for different methods to incorporate it in through the standards-based instruction that teachers are expected to deliver. So one of the things that we found was that with student journals, there's a reintroduction of doodling along with it. This is a tool that research shows helps with recollection and retention at much higher rates than note-taking with keyboards. And it also helps with automaticity in writing projects. I sorely needed automaticity for this project, I assure you. They can also incorporate inspirational sites or resources when working with their kids. Introduce mindfulness in any area of life is always helpful, but most of all in classrooms. San Francisco Unified School District has done this, and the results are starting to show. They've had decreases in dropouts, expulsions, office referrals, absenteeism, and their grades are climbing. Imagine what a little more instructional time can do in a classroom with less disruptions, not being sent to the principal's office for those worthless referrals to the detention halls, and not being allowed in class. Teachers can also start a TED Ed Club, and I'm not going to go into that too much because it might be considered advertisement from my company, but TED Talks provide inspiration and motivation and insight into many of the arts of being a human, thus making it possible to be a human being. Another tool that we have is to engage the kids with a reality-based project. This could be anything. In one school I work with, the second grade students were researching an 8-year-old shepherd boy from Peru whose sheep were killed. Of their own volition, the kids took on this shepherd boy and have currently raised over $1,000 for the National Geographic School Publishing and Heifer International. So it doesn't take much to engage the kids, and these kids today continue to communicate with explorers from the society who are actually working in Peru and identified this shepherd boy. So here are some examples of what I've been talking about. We have the clouds and weather tracker from one of the students' science journals where they've been drawing pictures, collecting images. A little blurb for the TED Ed Clubs. Again, there is curriculum that integrates the TED Ed into an actual curriculum. And, I am a paper deadline and I'm about to miss it. So, on to the next slide. Here's the bibliography, just in case you have some questions as to what I've been referring to. I hope that this is of some form of inspiration to you and teachers, and I want to thank you for your time.